I never thought a quiet afternoon in my own neighborhood would end with my son in tears and me flashing a badge I swore I'd never need off-duty. My 10-year-old son, Jamie, who's autistic and the sweetest kid you'll ever meet, was just doing what he loves most, lining up his toy cars on the sidewalk in front of our home. It's something that helps calm him. He wasn't bothering anyone. But apparently, that wasn't okay with our neighborhood's self-appointed rule enforcer, also known as the HOA Karen. She marched over, arms crossed, that familiar scowl on her face. We've had a few tense run-ins before, mostly her nagging about grass length or the trash cans not being pulled in quickly enough, but this time was different. She didn't see me watching from the front window. She definitely didn't recognize Jamie's behaviors for what they were, just a child being in his own world, minding his own business. What happened next made my blood run cold. She yelled something at him, and when he didn't respond the way she wanted because he couldn't, she slapped the cars out of his hand and shoved him back. That's when I came out. Now, here's what she didn't know. I'm not just Jamie's dad. I'm a federal agent with 15 years of experience, trained to stay calm under pressure, but this hit differently. I could see my son frozen, overwhelmed, trying to process what just happened. And this woman was still standing there like she had done the right thing. My instinct kicked in, but not the one you might think. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I walked right up, reached into my jacket, and calmly showed her who she was really dealing with. But trust me, that was just the beginning. Because what came next wasn't just about standing up for my son, turned into something much bigger than either of us expected. Karen's face shifted the second she saw my badge. Her mouth opened, then closed, like she wasn't sure whether to argue or run. But I wasn't looking for a reaction. I was looking at Jamie. He was still standing there, his little fists clenched, his eyes wide and glossy. I walked over to him slowly, crouched down, and put a hand on his shoulder. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I knew exactly what he was feeling, confused, scared, and overwhelmed. I turned back to her and asked, as calmly as I could, "Did you just put your hands on my son?" She stammered something about him blocking the sidewalk and how she didn't know he was special. That word hit me like a slap. I stood up straight and told her exactly what she needed to hear. That my son didn't owe her an explanation for existing peacefully in front of his own home. But something about her reaction didn't sit right with me. She kept glancing around like she was nervous, not just about me, but about who else might have seen. That's when I noticed the doorbell camera across the street to our neighbor's house. And suddenly, I realized Karen wasn't just overstepping boundaries. This might not have been the first time she acted like this. What if other families in the neighborhood had been targeted? What if Jamie wasn't the only kid she's harassed? As I helped Jamie gather his cars, Karen tried to walk off like nothing had happened. I let her go, but I wasn't done. I needed to talk to the HOA, but more than that, I wanted to get the full story. Something told me this was deeper than a bad attitude and a power trip. And I was starting to wonder if this neighborhood had been dealing with her behavior for longer than I thought so. I started asking questions. Quietly, carefully. And what I uncovered next made this incident look like just the tip of the iceberg. Over the next few days, I started talking to neighbors quietly, one by one. Most of them were hesitant at first. A few even looked over their shoulders before speaking, like they were afraid someone might hear. And then the stories started coming out. A single mom down the block said Karen reported her for leaving toys in the yard, claiming they were unsightly. Another neighbor, a retired veteran, said she once tried to fine him for flying a small American flag from his porch because it wasn't HOA approved. And then there was the elderly couple across the street they'd gotten a letter from. The HOA threatening legal action over their garden gnome collection. All of it traced back to one person, Karen. But the worst part, when I asked if anyone had ever pushed back, they all said the same thing: it's not worth the trouble. Apparently, Karen was tight with someone on the HOA board. Every complaint against her ignored any rules she broke. Looked the other way. And when people tried to stand up to her, somehow their HOA fees doubled, or mysterious citations showed up on their door. It wasn't just annoying, this felt coordinated. Meanwhile, Jamie hadn't been the same. He avoided going outside, even. Though the sidewalk was his favorite place to play. He didn't say much, but he started flinching whenever someone knocked at the door. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about Karen's behavior. It was about what kind of neighborhood we were living in. If someone like her had that much power, and kids like Jamie weren't safe just being themselves, then what kind of message were we sending? But I still had questions. Why was the HOA protecting her? What gave her the nerve to act like she was untouchable? And most importantly, what could I do that would actually make a difference without risking Jamie's peace even more? I started digging property records, board member lists, even security footage from the day of the incident. And slowly, a pattern started forming. One that pointed to something bigger than just one angry neighbor with too much time on her hands. The deeper I looked, the stranger things got. I found out Karen wasn't just close with someone on the HOA board. She was related to the board president, her brother-in-law to be exact. And it looked like they'd been playing the system for years. Fines that were never documented properly. Board elections that were quietly pushed through without notices. Rules enforced only on certain residents, mostly the ones who didn't speak up. It was all right there in the paperwork. If you knew what to look for. I went through emails, public records, anything I could legally access. And then I came across something that made my stomach turn. A complaint filed 2 years ago by another family with a special needs child, most identical to what happened with Jamie. Same sidewalk, same toys, same story. The family moved away shortly after. No one ever talked about it. And just like that, it was like they never existed in the HOA's files. The pieces started clicking together. Karen had a pattern targeting families who were less likely to push back, and with her brother-in-law protecting her, she had no reason to stop. That meant Jamie was never going to be safe out there unless something changed. I couldn't let that happen. But I also knew that if I made one wrong move, the board could turn this into a messy legal fight. And that would drag Jamie into it. Something I desperately wanted to avoid, so I decided to collect everything. Every video, every email, every quiet story from my neighbors. I started putting together a file, something solid enough to bring real pressure. Either through legal channels or, if needed, through the media. But before I could finish, I got a letter taped to my door. No envelope, no return name. Just a typed message that read, "Back off. Last warning." That's when I realized someone was watching me. Maybe more than one person. And if they were bold enough to leave that message, they might be bold enough to do worse. But I wasn't backing off, because what happened to Jamie wasn't just personal, it was a line that never should have been crossed. And I was ready to push back. I stood there on my porch, holding the letter, trying to keep my thoughts straight. It wasn't just some passive-aggressive HOA. Notice this was a threat. I scanned the street. Everything looked normal. Kids on bikes, someone mowing their lawn, a neighbor walking their dog. But now, I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were on me. Someone didn't want the truth getting out, and they were willing to cross a line to stop me later that night. After Jamie had gone to bed, I went back to reviewing the files. I kept the lights low, blinds drawn. That's when I noticed something I had missed before. Karen wasn't just tied to the HOA board. She was also listed as the property standards consultant for a local management company that handled multiple neighborhoods in the area. It looked like she had influence in more than just ours. This wasn't about one HOA gone bad. This was about a network of people quietly abusing the system across several communities. That was the first twist. But what came next stopped me cold. I pulled up a scanned HOA meeting note from almost a year ago in internal records someone had anonymously emailed me. Karen had proposed a motion to monitor homes with high behavioral disturbances, claiming it was for community peace. Buried in the fine print were vague guidelines that basically gave the board permission to single out families with special needs children. The language was subtle, but the intent was clear. This was targeted. Jamie wasn't collateral damage. He was a target. The second I realized that, the fight became even more personal. I wasn't just dealing with a nosy neighbor anymore, was standing in the middle of something much uglier. A system that had quietly bullied vulnerable families, under the guise of rules and neighborhood order. And if I wasn't careful, they could twist the narrative and make it look like I was the problem. That's when I heard the soft ping from my phone. An email? No subject line, no sender. Just for words, "We know your son." That email stopped me in my tracks. My first instinct was to run straight to Jamie's room, just to make sure he was okay. He was as